we wanted to sit down for a couple of minutes and talk through with a real photographer about some of the questions that you might have coming out of this focus on marketing your photography business. So we sat down with Amy, who's a St. Louis photographer, and hopefully she's representative of a lot of the questions you might have in your specific business as it relates to marketing it. All right, so Amy, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background in photography, and then we'll dive into some of the questions you have.
I started at a commercial studio in Kansas City, and I moved to St. Louis, I would say 9-10 years ago, and started assisting and producing at a agency. And so I moved my way up to commercial photographer, and I recently, I would say a year and a half ago, started my own business, and I'm opening a studio.
And so this is probably a perfect representation of so many people who are at the beginning phases of their business, who, in your case, have a lot of photography experience.
Right.
And when it comes to the business side, you've also got that totally nailed down, right?
Completely.
So I know we've talked a little bit off air, but a lot of the questions you're having are probably really representative of what a lot of other people who are sitting at home watching this course have. Marketing your business, growing that business it's
a whole other aspect.
It's a whole other aspect, yeah. And it's so different than the photography.
It's different than the craft itself.
There's the craft of photography, and then there's the marketing, the business side of it. So, well, good. What we're going to do is start by going through your website.
Okay.
Because we started the course by looking at the website as really the place where you're going to put all of your content in your hub and kind of build your marketing plan out of. What we looked at right off the bat are just some pretty easy things you can do that aren't super techy, but that will help set this website up for a little bit more success.
Okay.
The first thing is that you're on a non-secure site. You're on HTTP.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so it's really recommended nowadays that everybody, whether you're selling or not selling, actually doing transactions on your website, you want to be on an HTTPS.
Okay.
Not necessarily a difficult transition, but maybe not something you'd feel comfortable with, but you can hire that pretty quickly and get it taken care of.
Okay.
So here's what happens if you're not on a secure site now is Chrome puts this big not secure button up that all your clients and potential clients get to stare at.
I honestly thought that it was secure because I thought I paid more because I talked to GoDaddy and I did pay more.
You might have paid for it, but not actually transitioned your site over to that.
Huh. Okay.
So you might have the HTTPS version secured, but not actually on that.
Okay.
So that's one little thing.
Sure.
Another little thing is you have a nice logo here. Try to work that into a favicon up here.
Okay.
Not a big deal. Not going to help your website rank any better, but it is a nice, seamless, professional way.
And what is your opinion? I do not have a homepage, and I know that's something I probably need to have because right now it goes right into my beverage. Do you recommend having a homepage versus?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
You do. You want to have a homepage.
Sure.
Better site navigation, and then this will really, it could be troublesome down the road.
Yeah.
As you try to build on this site, you might not always have beverage as your focus. Just have beverage be another one of your categories or your spokes, as it were, on the webpage. Okay. Speaking of navigation, frankly, you probably want to just clean up this terminology right here.
Right.
You know, and you're smiling, so maybe you've had that thought before. With these nice single-word statements that are very categorical. Beverage, okay, I get it. You take pictures of beverages. Fitness, great, I get it. You take pictures of fitness. Lifestyle, and then people, places, and four-legged friends.
Right.
It's like, well, what is that? You know, maybe we can come up with a word that summarizes that, and so then, therefore, you have your categories. And then we go back to food, you know, and so you probably want to clean that up. Now, one of the big areas that is a big priority right now is your site speed. Speed and how fast it loads and how fast it works through things is very important. It's actually now a ranking factor, and it's something that all sites you want to focus on because it's just a better user experience. With more people looking at your site on their mobile device now than probably on their desktop.
Right.
Speed is huge.
Yeah.
And so from a standpoint of speed, there's a number of different things you can look at to improve speed. One of them is images. And the images that we found on this homepage are large, probably not saved to the right proportion, and also probably not saved in the best file format. And so you want to get to work on these images because at least on the homepage, it's really slow. And the homepage is huge.
Right.
The homepage, if I remember correctly from our site audit, was over 40 megabytes. and you want to have a home page, or you want to have any page be 1, 2, maybe 3 megabytes in total size.
Okay.
So some things you can do are these images. They're nice and large, and I bet they look wonderful on larger screens and all that, but you need to get those dimensions down for starters.
Yep.
Then you want to export them for a web setting, and then you want to further compress them, maybe with some software like a JPEG Mini or something like that. You want to get the file sizes, if you can, down to like 200, maybe 250 kilobytes each.
Okay.
Save them as JPEGs. So some of these are saved as PNGs.
Now, when a creative director is looking at it on his big screen, does it become pixelated at all?
It could.
Okay.
So this is a balance that you're
Sure.
going to have to strike.
Yeah.
Who is your target client?
Yeah.
And exactly what do you know about them? And if every one of them is going to be looking at your images on a really large screen, then you're going to want to toe that balance between having your images be really good to pretty good on that screen, but also
Versus
having them
fast on
fast on a mobile
phone.
device,
Right,
you know?
right.
And that's a perfect balance. And you asked a great question.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to just optimize your site so that it's super fast, but looks terrible on your
Exactly.
perfect client.
Right.
And what they're experiencing.
Sure.
On. But if you are targeting people who only are experiencing your website on their phones, then you don't need
tablet or
tablet.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's some of the big areas that you want to focus on. Another area to look into for your site, as we were talking about image size as it relates to mobile versus desktop, is just make sure that if you have the functionality to have a responsive design, to make sure you're utilizing that, because
Okay.
that can affect how things look on mobile, and using different sized images, different dimensions for the images, as compared to when you're on a desktop and actually pulling different sizes for the desktop. So
Right.
another thing you want to look into.
Okay.
There was some GIFs on here as well.
Correct.
And I remember they were a couple clicks over.
Yeah.
And so these were large. I would say that unless you feel you have to have those,
Okay.
they're going to speed your site up so much and give you so much more speed by pulling them off.
Okay. I mean, I put some in beverage and in food because I felt like that's something that most photographers don't have up. So it kind of gave me a little bit something unique. And that is something I do utilize on my Instagram. So maybe, are you saying keep it to a format like that, Instagram and Facebook versus website?
You don't have to worry about speed on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay.
So that is, to that credit,
enough.
the
Okay.
downside of a GIF here is not a downside on those social media
Sure.
platforms. What I can't tell you what your ideal client wants.
Right.
But what I can tell you is that unless your ideal client has to have that, it is really slowing your site down.
No, it's just unique.
So yeah,
honestly.
I totally get
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Let's see. One of the things we did was we looked at your site in terms of how it was showing up on Google,
Okay.
in terms of how Google was crawling your site
Interesting.
and what was showing up. We used this site : and then your website.
Okay.
And so a couple things came out of that. First off, is this about roughly how many pages you have live, you think? Probably about 9 different pages on your website, roughly speaking.
I have like categories? 1, 2, 3,
6.
4, 5, 6.
And it looks like you also have a
With the About Me.
new cover page.
I do.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
I see. You have commercial, real
Okay.
estate, and travel. So anyways, yeah, I get it. As long as
Wow.
you're in the right range, that's fine.
Okay.
Now, here's something.
Yeah, I didn't know I had that. Okay.
So we have your titles and your meta descriptions. The titles have fitness, and then they
Sure.
have some default site name, and then
Okay.
they have your website. So you want to go ahead and clean those up and give it a title.
I honestly am pretty busy on jobs. So how easy is this for me to do personally?
So marketing's going to take some time. The good news
Yeah.
is this type of stuff we're talking about does not take much time at all.
Okay.
It
awesome.
does. There is some technical sides to it, and so there's
Right.
switching that site from an HTTP over to secure HTTPS. That might be something you want to reach out to get some help from.
Okay.
Might be something your provider can help you with.
Okay.
I know a lot of photographers that I've talked to have reached out. Their providers walked them through it. 30 minutes later, it's done. The transfer happens and it's good to go.
It's easy.
So a lot of these things like meta tags, titles, that sort of stuff, meta descriptions, it's not a big deal. Shouldn't take you very long.
Okay.
Changing the file sizes, that's something that you probably have experience with in Photoshop, and you
Right.
can utilize through that. In terms of making sure your site's mobily responsive, that's usually just a button you check or something that you have as a part of your theme, as a part of what you're using in terms of hosting those components.
Okay.
The most important thing is that you are spending, we'll call it 20% of the time to get 80% of the results. All you're
Right.
trying to do is just get your
Tweak it a little bit.
Exactly.
Sure.
You don't need to make a website that is, ready to go win awards.
Right.
If you have that time and that's something you want to do,
Right.
great. But we're not talking about trying to completely revolutionize your website. We're trying to just make sure that it has the basic and best components to accept all the business and all the traffic you're going to hopefully start sending to it.
Drive to it.
That's
Okay.
what, because what we're advocating for is that this website does become your home. It becomes your domain, where
My
you're going
go-to
to
spot.
exactly over time, that's something you own and you want to start to proliferate and bring out there.
Okay.
So let's just do the simple tweaks to make it the best that it can be.
Okay.
Now I noticed you didn't have a blog.
I don't have a blog.
Is that by design or is that by accident?
I have never understood why people have blogs because personally I never look at them.
Okay.
And I don't feel like I have time to keep up with one.
That is a great launching point
Yeah.
into why you might actually want a blog.
Why is that?
Well, for starters, and we've talked about it a little bit, but you're not your ideal client. And just because you don't read other photographers' blogs,
True story.
you're a photographer.
Yeah.
Now, right now, what are you doing when it comes to marketing your content? In terms of your content, it sounds like what you would view as your images. Post them on Instagram.
That's about it.
Post them on Facebook. Oh, no, stop Facebook.
I stopped Facebook.
Stop Facebook. When you
Yeah.
sit down to put it on Instagram, do you just tell stories about the images? Or do you come up with what you say about the images?
I Google what hashtags to put. I'm just being real.
Totally, I
Like,
get
I
it.
just Google what should I hashtag. That's
What's your
it.
hashtag?
Yeah.
And so it's the image and then the hashtag.
That's it.
What about all the great stories behind the images?
I don't describe it.
But right now, where are you getting your business from? It's from friends and families, from other past
Right.
people you've worked with. It's from people
Correct.
that know you.
Correct.
It's from people that know you.
It has all been creative directors or friends or things like that that has really driven my business.
Correct.
Yeah.
You're gonna be up against a completely uphill battle.
Right.
If you're relying on your imagery
Yeah.
to stand out.
I agree with that.
Because even the best creative directors in the
Yeah.
world are going to be putting you up against the other best photographers.
Right. So how do I get there? How do I get that type of traffic?
The only way for you to tell a story that can fully encapsulate you, skyrocket and elevate your brand in their minds and separate you
Right.
from all the competition is by all the things that are going on behind the image, by all the things that are going into the image, by all the things that only you can bring
Right.
to that image. If you start with a blog,
Yeah.
and if you start by creating content that's meant to answer questions, solve problems, and inspire your target market, and if you start by using your images as not the actual content itself, but by using them as the basis for what you create your content from. And you start by telling stories to inspire your clients. You start by talking and walking through problems that you know they're going to have. You start answering questions that you know creative directors are going to need answers to. And you use your blog as the hub for that.
Okay.
And then you take
More
all
of a
that.
personal touch.
Exactly.
I guess. Yeah.
You tell the stories behind the images.
Okay.
You answer the questions you know they're going to have. You put yourself and position yourself as an authority because that doesn't happen when you just post an image on Instagram.
Right.
If you just post an image on Instagram and put a couple hashtags, what about you stands out from everybody else? What makes you the expert in that? Just the image alone?
How do you drive traffic to that blog?
You can use Instagram to broadcast that message. But now you're broadcasting a message that's far different than just an image with a couple of hashtags.
Okay.
Now you're broadcasting a message that's part of a bigger story, that's part of who you are, that's part of your brand, that's part of the why behind what you do, and that actually gives a creative director reason to book you over everybody else who's just posted images.
So you're saying maybe doing some like behind the scenes or this is my shoot and kind of.
You have
process
stories
of
behind
it.
all the images. We
Right.
sat off camera before we even got on
Right.
here, and you told me all the stories behind how you lit this and how you
Right.
did that and why you did this and why you did that. That's the stuff that people want to hear about. That's what makes you unique.
Okay.
That's also what makes you an expert in what you do, and that's
Yeah.
also what sets you apart from everybody else around you. But you're not giving any of those stories an opportunity to come out until, like you said, you talk to them on the phone.
Yeah.
The problem is no one's going to pick up the phone to call you because they don't know about that story and they don't know about what separates
Or
you.
even like my Costa Rica photos. I mean, they're beautiful photos, but people don't really know the story behind it. So you're saying that could be a good avenue to kind of tell the story behind it or show more of the scenery or.
Where you want to be writing and creating content around is
Okay.
where your unique stories intersect your target market stories and their wants, their desires, and their needs, and how you can satisfy and fulfill those. Your images, they're just the currency to get you there. Your images are just what you use to craft and create the story. Your images are just what you post as an excuse to put something up on Instagram so you can have a story behind it, so you can let them in on exactly who you are.
Okay.
And that's how content starts to become the cornerstone, the hub of what you're doing.